Welcome to episode 32. And today we're going to go into what I have named Silence in the Heavens, our half hour of Gethsemane. Truthfully, it's the book of Job, but I want to kind of apply it forward, kind of make it so it's
We're all
pertinent.
about prophecy in the Old Testament.
It's the
right?
Isaiah 46:10 thing.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to do today, as we're going to go forward and apply that to our future. Anyway, like I was saying, it's Job, and I'm not going to say all those chapters, but you can just look at it on the screen.
You got to cover the whole book of Job anyway.
And it's pretty much going to be the whole book. Yeah, and so don't worry about that. But anyway, episode 32, and I'm Farrell.
And I'm Rhonda Pickering.
And as usual, give us that like. We would love to have your support in every way possible. Thank you as we try to serve you. So jumping right in, let's just start to ask all the big questions. What are the big questions? Why does God let bad things happen to good people? I'm going to add that. Why does God let bad things happen to good people? That's the question of the day. I mean, and I'm going to actually explore this a whole lot more as we get into it. But let's not answer all the questions on the first presentation.
I was going to say, too, I mean, you go through the whole book of Job, and that question is still hanging out there.
Yeah, that's truthfully, Job, the book of Job doesn't really answer the question.
Right.
Other than the fact, trust God because he sees a bigger picture than us. I mean,
exactly.
That's the only way he really answers it. So another big question that comes up in the book of Job is God just? What a concept. I mean, we believe God's just, but it sure seems sometimes when you look at the world as we see it, it sometimes doesn't seem just.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the better question is, I think we all know that God is just, but is God just from our point of view?
Yeah.
Is where we usually are.
And we're going to address that a little farther along in here, but I'm just going to hit this little point, and that is sometimes we look at a picture too focused. We got to look at a broader picture and answer that question, I think, because whether God is just or not isn't always answered in the moment. He's not into quick justification or quick fulfillment. He has a different purpose in mind. Why was it necessary for Gethsemane to happen? Have you ever asked yourself that question? I mean, because the Christian world would say that God is all powerful. He's omnipotent. So if that's true, why is it necessary for a Gethsemane event?
Well, I've heard
and the cross.
Some of the kids, when we're doing seminary classes and such, they'll say, why did he need to suffer? Why didn't he just forgive everybody,
Yeah, what's with all the theatrics kind of deal sometimes, And so that's another big question that comes up in the book of Job indirectly, because in a way I see Job as a little bit of a type of Christ, because it says in the first chapter that he was perfect, and we'll get there. But so Christ was perfect. Why did he have to suffer? It's just kind of it's a big question that we run into, this whole idea of justice. It's not a question that's easily answered in the moment. Okay, I'm gonna vary a little bit from that concept, and I'm gonna jump into this idea that was kind of introduced at the beginning of our country. The whole concept of innocent until proven guilty. Back in ancient England and a lot of places, you were accused, you were guilty until proven innocent. You had to work the opposite direction. And so this idea of innocent until proven guilty was very novel in the founding of our country. Unfortunately, we've gone back the other way now. And we're almost going to the point of guilty until proven innocent just by an accusation.
Well, I think the media has a lot to do with
Sure,
it too.
and public opinion and
right.
And the whole 9 yards. Well, and it's not like that hasn't existed in times past. They used to have lynchings because of mob decisions and public opinion before all the facts were in sometimes, and that's not necessarily a compliment to our history, but you have to ask yourself, because I know lots of people who don't believe. I've actually talked to them in our day, don't believe in innocent until proven guilty. They want to see it the other way around. And the reason they want to see it the other way around is because they got this idea, well, we got to protect the innocent, and yet that's a contradiction of terms because which innocent are you going to protect? You're going to protect the accused or the accuser.
Well, and also in other cultures, they don't even have that concept. They have the concept that, the greater majority of the people is more important than the individual. So even if the individual was not guilty, as long as, everybody got a fair warning about what could happen to you if you were guilty, then that was okay.
Right. And so this whole concept of innocent until proven guilty, I'm very much a believer in. I absolutely believed it was inspired of God because we want to not punish the innocent for a crime they didn't do, in a sense. And yet Job seems
Yeah, I was just going to say,
it seems like
are we talking about Job here?
Yeah. So this is a big question we're going to have to get into, and we're not going to answer all that right on the first slide here, or the first presentation, but we're gonna jump into these things. So the next question you have to ask is, if we believe in innocent until proven guilty, how much do we believe in free agency? How much do we believe we should protect people before the crime? Before the events happen. And so that's a big question. And you could argue that, where a lot of people argue the position that free agency is, we got to have all these restrictions to keep us from varying out too far. And so we're trying to protect us from anything ever going wrong. So I want to just jump into this next point, which is Newtonian physics, actually, or in Newtonian, the laws of Newtonian physics. For every action, there's an opposite reaction. Well, how does that apply to Scripture? How does that apply to our lives? Well, when we read in Nephi that it must needs there be opposition in all things, that's kind of Newtonian physics, where we actually are going into the idea that for every action there is an opposite reaction. So I'm just going to throw this out there, and then we're going to explore it more maybe here in the future if I remember to do so. And that is, so is that what's the reaction to Gethsemane? What is the opposite and equal reaction to Gethsemane? Well, it's our salvation. What a beautiful concept, that his willing offering makes it possible for us to be redeemed.
Well, I guess I'm going to ask you a question right out of the gate. Hopefully we'll see if we get into this discussion a little bit. But is law and justice the same thing? Because if we say, is God just, is God lawful? I mean, is that the same thing, or are those two different things? Because you're talking about equal and opposite reactions. And, according to Paul in the New Testament, the law of God actually condemns us.
Exactly. So there needs to be something to balance.
But does God love law?
Balance the scales. He does love. Well, it actually goes too far as he says, I can't look upon
sin with the least degree of allowance.
Sin with the least degree of allowance. So wow, how do you reconcile these great big questions? And in the book of Job, it just lays them out right in front of us to the point where it's just staring us in the face. And I'm going to give you a little hint right now. I guess I'm going to jump in and give just a little hint, and that is, if it was all based on this life, you could easily argue that God is not just.
Right.
I mean, you could.
Well, people do argue.
Yeah, and you would take the position that if it was all based on this existence, there is no justice. I mean, everything is out of balance. It's lopsided. There's people are born into privilege, and other people are born into poverty. And if you were to just focus on this image of what existence is, this mortal experience that we're in, it would seem God is completely unjust.
And in the book of Job, that is exactly what the three friends
are arguing.
They're arguing with your best human philosophy, the fact that God is just, and therefore
you've sinned.
We've got, with our point of view and with best human reasoning, we're going to draw all of our conclusions from there.
Exactly. So I don't want to get bogged down too much in the front end of this presentation, because it's such a beautiful presentation in so many ways. So the big question we all jump into all the time, isn't it God's role to protect us? I mean, in our life, we look at the role of a father or a mother to protect the child, right?
Well, I know we hope so.
We try to protect them. And I actually listened to a sermon one time from a Christian preacher one time on a radio or something. I can't remember exactly where it was, where he actually said, you know, I want to send my children into the fight. And I was like,
right.
whoa, wait a minute. We've had this idea that we need to protect, and in a sense that's true, but sometimes we protect so much that we don't allow them the privilege. And I would argue that it's not God's role to protect us. No, it's God's role to bring to pass our exaltation. Okay, that's his focus. He's not in the business of protecting us and coddling us. He's in the business of raising us up and creating the eternal life of man to bring us forward from there. So the big question out of the gate is we have to almost get out of this idea that God's role is to protect us. And if you take that idea that it is his role to protect us, then the story of Job makes no sense at all.
I think it was Paul White. I've been trying to
Paul
think.
Washer.
Paul
Okay.
Washer. That was it. Yeah, and he gave that amazing talk, and his kids were on like missions, and he was saying, I don't pray that they're comfortable. I don't pray that they're not hungry. I don't pray. I pray that they're serving God and that his work is being done and that he is being glorified through them.
Yes, I love it. Okay, but just so that we've introduced the questions now, let's just jump into the material here. Job, a just and perfect man. Look at that wording. How would you like that to be said of you? How would you like God to say that of you? That you're a just and perfect man, is blessed with great riches, and Satan obtains leave from the Lord to tempt and try Job. His property and children are destroyed, and yet he praises and blesses the Lord. So just so you understand, in the Hebrew, the word Satan is like the prosecutor. It's the accuser.
Yeah, it's not a name, it's a title.
Okay. Yeah.
He's
if you're in a courtroom,
yeah,
he's the prosecutor, and you have to look at it from that perspective a lot. Okay? And so as we address these things, let's just jump into the first verse.
Before you do, I think that whole court scene is intended that we place, and that's part of the book of Job, is that they don't define a lot of the backstory and the setting of the story, because they're trying to present a situation that we can put ourselves
in the throne room.
Yeah, we're in the throne room and we have a prosecution and they are accusing us, and they're saying, well, basically just imagine Satan at the throne saying, oh, well, what's going to happen when they suffer?
So Satan takes on this role of the prosecuting attorney, and Christ takes on the role of the defense attorney. Yeah. Okay, and
the mediator.
God's in the judge position.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we look at this from a theophany point of view almost here. So let's just read what it says here. And there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, one who feared God and escheweth evil. I hope I said that correctly. Right here out of the gate, what an introduction to you, or as a man. So already the judge is saying, hey, I know the character of this person.
Well, I like that in verse 1 of the book of Job, we're just informed that he's innocent.
Right.
That all that's going to happen in here is just man applying man's wisdom to the issue of Job's suffering. But, you know, we get that inside point of view from the narrator right in verse 1. By the way, he was innocent.
Yeah. That's what a reference. Okay. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one who feareth God and escheweth evil? So he's reiterating what he already said in verse 1, that Job, and I don't know, it's a little uncomfortable to me that he's saying, hey, Satan, have you considered Job? Have you thought about testing him? or something. It's like, and as a prosecuting attorney in this situation, Satan says, well, the reason he's good is because you've blessed him so much.
Right.
Okay. And because you've blessed him so much, if he wasn't blessed so much, he would.
I can just imagine this in the council in heaven, where God's we're being accused and we're being said,
well, no, don't take it another step. Perfect and upright. Who's the only perfect and upright person? I mean, they're saying he's perfect and upright, but I think in the Hebrew you could quantify that in the realm he's at. Okay, I mean, obviously Jesus was in a different realm, but this same argument could have been said of Christ.
Well, but I'm saying too that it could have been said about us before we're tested.
Well,
what's going to happen if you send him down?
It'd be wonderful if that could be said, but I don't know that.
Well, I'm talking about before we messed up, before we got down here.
Right.
But back when we were innocent, and we were like, oh, send me in. I'm so excited. Let me go. And Satan is just like, wait till you suffer. Let's see what happens then.
Okay, I'm going to not pause. I'm going to insert a little thing that I've read a couple of comments in the dialogue that sometimes we get so excited we kind of talk over one another, and I apologize for that, but we'll do the best we can. But we get excited about the material, so
Yes.
If we talk over one another, I hope you cut Charity, because we're not meaning to cause you distress. Okay, we just get into the material, and we very much enjoy the discussion. Okay, so we'll do the best we can, but cut us some charity. So this just and perfect man that we're talking about, Satan obtains the leave of the Lord to afflict Job physically. He is smitten with boils, and these three so-called friends come to comfort him. Some comfort. I think sometimes we all comfort one another this way. Well, maybe it's because, and we're all trying to fix it, right?
Exactly, because that's what we want to do. We
truthfully,
want to fix it.
One of the hardest things in our relationships as husband and wife, children and parents, all of that, one of the hardest things to do is not always, sometimes we try to fix it too much. When the person comes with us
to listen,
and they're looking to solve, or they're needing comfort, and we've got all the answers. And
sometimes the best thing is to say,
just to listen. Sometimes
I don't have the answers. I really
don't say anything, because sometimes just saying you don't have the answers isn't comfort either. Sometimes they just need to be heard,
right, and
just loved, return love. But it's our nature, all of us, to want to take the role of these three friends. Oh, this is because. Oh, this is because. You did, obviously you're suffering because of this and this and this, or something you did, or you could fix it this way.
Because, and here's the big assumption that they're making right out of the gate, because a just God would not be letting you suffer if you were righteous.
Yeah, if you were doing it right.
That's the big assumption they're making out of the gate.
Yeah, if you were doing it right, this wouldn't happen. Well, Job flies in the face of that philosophy, because he already made it quite clear that Job is just and perfect man, is the wording it uses, and yet he's having all these things happen to him.
And the real answer is outside of their assumption.
Because it's outside
God can have a person
of their realm
for suffering that doesn't make sense.
It's coming from a higher purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes we have a tendency to forget that higher purpose, and we're trying to judge everything in the here and now. And that is the big mistake we make, that God's purpose is to exalt us, if we will be, if we choose in. And that's a beautiful thing. So in chapter 2, obviously, we got that Satan obtains leave to do that. And in chapter 3, Job curses the day and services of his birth and asks, why died I not from the womb? Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes we want to say, oh, you whiner. No. Maybe I'm a whiner, because sometimes in my challenges in life, I have felt those same feelings. I have been in a place where I just questioned why I was even here, what I was doing, not because I doubted the Lord, but because I doubted me. and that's the natural place to go, is we go to the place of, oh, I must not be worthy. God wouldn't do this to me if I was a good person. And I'm going to go into a story a little more, but I want to at least do one more slide first, and that is let's where we actually get into the scriptural account here of what he's saying. Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let the clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. Now, I don't feel like hardly any of us have been tried to the level of Job. I really, other than Christ himself, perhaps.
Do you know that Jeremiah quotes Job? He says the same thing in his experience.
What I'm trying to tell you is, and this is where I'm going to get into something quite personal, is I felt that. And I'm going to tell a little bit of my history here. Back in 2008, when the downturn of the construction industry, and I found myself financially back to the wall. And I was struggling. And the Lord seems to take us to our weakest points sometimes. And finances, just so you know, my dad was an accountant who was a very solid financial manager person, and I inherited that.
So to fail in finances
was the ultimate failure. Yeah, we're talking this was my, I will even go farther, is my Gethsemane. And in 2008, in the downturn in construction, and I found myself back to the wall, and my business was failing, and I ended up having to take work in Hawaii to pay the bills, and I had to go to Hawaii because I needed the wages that Hawaii paid in order to keep up with the needs of the family. And I had to go alone to begin with. And I went out to Hawaii and I worked, a couple of years, I think. It was more than a couple. It was actually 3 or 4 years.
Well, it was long enough that I said, wait, this is not.
And I would fly back and forth. Yeah, it was a very difficult situation. Right? Yeah. I was in Hawaii working, actually, I think it was 4 years almost. And I was traveling back like every couple of weeks to be with the family. A heck of a way to run a house. It was very difficult. And it was during that time, I hate to confess some of my sins, but I'm going to confess a couple here. And that is, I did watch The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And anyway, and if you understand in the samurai scene, if they failed in mission, they do what they call hara-kiri. And it's not that I would ever do that, because I understood too much that you can't take your own life. I knew that part.
But you were in a low place.
But I was in that wording right there. God, why don't you take me? I've failed my mission. I failed what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm living alone in Hawaii. I'm not with my family. I'm in a stupid situation.
And for those that have ever had family experiences and going through that from my point of view, there was nothing I could say that would help, because this was
my dragon.
It was your dragon. It was your Gethsemane. Yeah. And I tried, but...
Well, she was a saint.
No.
I don't mean that.
I don't mean that. I'm just saying, I want other people out there to understand that when we get to that Gethsemane place, it's our own battle.
It is. And it's that battle between us and God, and that it's Job right here. This is what it is. And I realized that I was not like Job, but
it felt like it.
It was my Gethsemane. It was very difficult times. And this next verse kind of describes that. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me. That was what was happening. My biggest fear was financial struggle, and it had come upon me. And that which I was afraid of is coming upon me. It was not in safety. Neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. So I'm burying my soul a little bit here, that sometimes the things where we fear the most is where we get tried the most. And that's because God's purpose is to get us past it.
Right. It's going to work its way in our life to the point where we either make it or it breaks us.
Yeah. And too often, emotionally, it broke me, but it broke me to the point that I had nowhere to turn. And well, and I say I had nowhere to turn. That isn't accurate, because Rhonda never wavered. Job's wife wavered.
Yeah, I like to think I wasn't like Job's wife, but I don't know, because, it's really hard to look at what happened to Job and think, oh, I would have passed that test.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, however, she did do what the three friends tried to do. She did try to fix me some of the time. Yes. She did try to fix me.
Well, if we just did this.
you just need to do it. She had all kinds of counsel to give that didn't help, because the pain.
The best of Greek wisdom and thought.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I'm just sharing these things with you that you might see that your Gethsemane, your places that you fear, and the times you have been low, and the times you have been just crying out to the Lord. And I'm going to jump ahead clear to the end a little bit for just a moment, and I'm going to say the Lord's okay with that. That's part of the story at the end of Job, is he says, it's okay for you to work this out before me.
And to pray to him and bare your heart.
And bury your
God,
heart.
this doesn't seem fair.
And he works it out with you. And that doesn't mean he makes you feel all better all of a sudden, although eventually it does. And I have to share with you, and maybe this is the best time to share it. Do you know what brought me out of that low place? Praise music. Praise to God. It healed my soul. All of a sudden, and I learned the beauty of praise music and praise to God. Because what I found when I went to this place is that praise music wasn't for him because he wants to be praised. Praise music was for me because it realigned my focus.
It helps you understand where Nephi was tied to the mast of the ship, and he was on death's door. All he did was sing praises to God.
And I've learned that, and yet sometimes when I get distracted and low, I'm like, what's going on? And once again, I have my lovely counselor.
Have to get all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been that low since those days, but
where there's nothing left, but
yeah.
but reject or praise.
And now we're quicker to remember that praise music heals the soul, and so
we sing praises a lot.
Yeah, so we sing praises a lot, and because I sometimes need to reset the programming.
We'll actually do that in the house. I am really having a rotten day. I need some praise songs.
So we put on the praise God music, and it's not because God's full of ego and he needs a trip. This is for us to align ourselves with him, and it's beautiful. And so I share that story with you that it might help you understand Job a little better on a personal level for me, where I was faced with my greatest fear. And
what was your answer?
And my answer was praise God. And then it just didn't seem as important. And funny enough, the finances kind of corrected themselves. As soon as I corrected my inner programming, the finances kind of fell into place. And yet, we've had times since then where it's, I'll call it what do they call that? Relapses, where I go into this fear sometimes, and I have to praise my way out of it.
Yeah. I heard one person bearing a testimony once that they were at one of those rock bottom places, those what we call Gethsemane's, personal, with a little
Personal.
G, not
Yeah,
a
little
capital
G.
G, the small Gethsemane places. And he asked a mentor of his, what do you do when there just it doesn't seem to be worth it? And he said, focus on the love of God.
Yes, well, and that's what praise is.
And did you know what's the opposite of fear?
Love.
Everybody thinks the opposite of fear is hate, but the opposite of fear is love.
Yeah.
And if you focus on, and most of our low places are one kind of fear or another. I just love that Job says that. He says, what I greatly feared, you fill in the blank,
Right.
has come upon me.
Yeah, and we could spend a lot of time on this,
Yeah,
but we need
we
to move on. So now we're to Job 4, and Eliphaz reproves Job in asking questions as, are the righteous cut off, and shall man be more pure than his maker? He's once again, he's trying to fix the problem. And that's what these three friends of Job do.
Well,
they just
and
keep trying to fix it all.
He's using that idea that, hey, we all know God's just. So obviously
You're the problem.
You're the problem,
Yeah.
not him.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And, we all kind of go there. I went there. I thought, I'm the problem, And really the problem was, well, we get to the end. That same question we've said before. God will ask you 1,000 times a day the same question. Do you trust me? Boy, that's a tough one sometimes. It's a really tough one sometimes.
And I think that we have our own emotional and spiritual Gethsemanes, but I don't think that we really have had a lot of physical ones. I don't think that most of us in America know what famine and starving to death is really like.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so let's move on, because I think we're going to end up going longer than I would like to. So we got the man is born into trouble. He's being told all those excuses. Seek unto God. Happy is the man whom God correcteth. And we know that's true. God correcteth who he loves. He tries to steer us and he corrects us. But sometimes that correction isn't real comfortable. But that is what it is. Okay, and then we have in Job 6, Job bemoans his grief. He prays that God will grant his petition. Those who are afflicted should be pitied. How forcible are right words? These. I'm giving you the summaries of these chapters because there's so much material here, and you could spend all year long on Job alone if you really wanted to, and that's true of most of these Come Follow Me's. There's so much here, the depth of understanding, that we can't possibly touch it, and therefore we have to choose little gems along the way, and it's hard sometimes to know which gem to choose. And so in Job 6, verses 8 and 9, oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant me the thing that I long for, even that God would please God destroy me, and that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. I actually felt those feelings. I felt like and that's my Gethsemane, So let's just move forward. In Job 7, is there an appointed time for man on earth? What is man that thou should magnify him? Why dost thou not pardon my transgressions? If you haven't felt these things, then maybe I'm unique, but I feel like to reconcile with God is a process. It's a journey that we go on, and we have to go through these exchanges in our secret prayers and in our different times of our life as we try to go and not. I'll remember as a young man, I was hurt really bad in a situation, and I just wanted to hold on to that pain, and I wanted somebody to pay.
Well, you want them to feel the pain you're feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually what you're doing, what we do, right?
And gratefully, the Spirit of the Lord has not ceased striving with me ever. And I'm so grateful for that. Because it's like he just spoke to me. He says, never get bitter. Just go forward. Roll with it. And so I did. And, I sound like life's been bad. Life hasn't been bad. No one could have as beautiful a relationship I have with my wife. and say life was bad. Nobody could have had the experiences I've had and say life was bad. But there has been those moments in my life where I got brought low because of my own fears. Anyway.
And again, we're going to be jumping ahead a little bit, but we have to kind of weave back and forth here. But the reality is that in the end, when God blesses Job, it's not because God's proved himself to be just. It's because Job gets humble.
Yeah. Humble's a hard pill to take sometimes, isn't it? Anyway, so let's just jump into Job 7, 20 and 21, where Job is confessing, I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee? O thou preserver of men, why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? And why dost thou not pardon my transgression and take away mine iniquity? For now shall I sleep in the dust, and thou shalt seek me in the morning, but I shall not be. In other words, he's given up. He's just laid himself out, and he's kind of given up. Not on God, because that's usually not, I mean, for me, I know that's true. I never gave up on God, but maybe I kind of did. Because there's a difference between believing Christ, believing in Christ is the way to word that. There's a book out called, that's by that name, and I've forgotten the author, but where it says, we believe in Christ, but do we believe Christ? That his atonement can really save me. That it can really pick me out of this place I'm at and exalt me.
He does that to other people.
Yeah, other people he saves, but to me, he doesn't save me because I'm the wretched man that I am, or whatever the case might be. So we got to believe Christ, that he really does love me enough that if I will but grab his hand, he will lift me out of it.
Okay, I got to throw one in here from
Okay.
Psalms, and I know we're not at Psalms yet, but you got to have this one, okay?
Okay.
In Psalms, it says that God thinks about us more times in a day than can be numbered.
Yeah,
Right? That's just mind-blowing.
He obviously has capacity we don't even understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets into another subject that I could love to go into.
I know, there's a rabbit.
But I don't have time.
I had to chase the rabbit.
Okay, there's too many rabbits, too many trails to take, too many shiny objects. Anyway, Job acknowledges the justice and greatness of God and concludes that man cannot contend against him. In other words, he's saying, okay, I don't understand, but you're the boss kind of deal. That's where he's kind of come to. But Job is weary of life. He expostulates with God about his affliction. Why hast thou brought me forth from the womb? It's the question reoccurring, this reoccurring drama that's playing out in his life.
I mean, it's really where we go when we say, God, if you're not going to be just the way
I think you should be.
see that it should be, then just give up.
Yeah, I love that, my give up. I'll definitely, we can kind of go there. Sometimes God does not answer us quickly, but leaves us in silence. And that kind of leads to the Isaiah 46:10. So when God leaves us in silence, we have a tendency to get feeling picked on, right? I mean, everybody gets feeling picked on. This is going to be a little
Wait a minute. Is that just? I'm suffering.
And you're not answering me.
Is it just for him
Not to answer.
Not leave me in silence?
Yeah, to leave me in silence. Well, this is going to get a little personal. This whole lesson is quite personal because I'm exposing my heart in ways that I'm a little uncomfortable doing, to be quite honest with you. But I'm doing it to hopefully give hope that the picture's bigger than we see, and we have to trust that. The whole picture is bigger than we see. In Job 10:19-21, I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried away from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little before I go whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. So Job's just like, hey, I got boils, and I just really want peace. I really want to be alone.
I love that in the end, God commends Job's honesty in prayer.
Yeah, his honesty to God.
I mean, God knows we have to work through this.
Yeah, it's a Gethsemane. So, okay, Jesus was there. He said,
God,
if it's possible,
can we do this
let
another way?
can this come pass?
Yeah.
This whole concept is and he's being honest with his father there. He's saying, hey, please, I get that personally. Anyway, so in Matthew, I've actually brought that up.
You did, look.
And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. I hope I said that well. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This is the Messiah going through his perfect Job experience, where he's saying those words, and he has that same, God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why is the heavens silent over me? Difficult. Why am I doing this, and why did I tile to this? There was silence in the heaven, which is a quote out of Revelation and D&C
verse
88.
1 and D&C 88. It's about verse 92.
Yeah, where he says, there's this half-hour silence. And I know there's many interpretations of that, and that's okay. If you don't like mine, I report, you decide. I guess I like that saying. But we are going into the future here when we will see times where it feels like God or the heavens are brass over our head, and there's a purpose in it.
And we will ask the questions: why, God, do you allow suffering? Am I not a good person?
Yeah, all those questions. Canst thou by searching find out God? So in our earnestness, sometimes we feel like we can't reach him. We can't penetrate through into the heavens. And he says, the hope of the wicked shall be as given up the ghost. So we find ourselves there. And if you feel like that's unnatural, then you're not familiar with church history. When Joseph Smith is in Liberty Jail, oh God, where art thou? And where is the pavilion that covereth thy hiding place? How long shall thy hand be stayed in thine eye? Yea, thy pure eye, behold from the eternal heavens the wrongs of thy people and of thy servants. And thy ear shall be penetrated with their cries. Yea, O Lord, how long shall they suffer these wrongdoings and unlawful oppressions before thy heart shall be softened toward them, and thy bowels be moved with compassion toward them? Opening verses of D&C 121.
That's kind of a Job question.
It is absolutely a Job question. And Joseph finds himself where in a jail cell where he can't even stand up straight. He can't even stretch out and stand up straight.
And this is at Liberty Jail.
It's at Liberty Jail, and he's finding these same questions and trying to understand. And so as we go forward in this, and you read later in D&C 121, O Lord God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth and seas, and of all things that are in them are, and whose controls and subjects the devil, and the dark and benign dominion of Sheol, stretch forth thy hand. Let thine eye pierce. Let thy pavilion be taken up. Let thy hiding place no longer be covered. Let their ear be inclined. Let their heart be softened, and the bowels be moved with compassion towards us. Let thy anger be kindled against our enemies, and the fury of thy heart, and the sword avenge us on our wrongs. Remember the suffering of the saints, O our God, and thy servants will rejoice in thy name forever.
I love that you're reading these because he's quoting Psalms. Where is the pavilion that covers thy hiding place? Psalm 31. You will shelter us and protect us in the pavilion.
There's a reason why I'm reading this also, and that is, I think in the years to come, these prayers are going to be on all of the saints' lips as that time of the silence in the heavens are. And we are going to be
prophetically in the future.
Yeah, and we're going to be saying these same prayers again. And we're going to be asking these same questions again, because it seems like the pavilion of his hiding place is silent for a half hour.
And God's answer will be the same. I am just. Wait. Trust. I've got it.
And it's going to seem unfair, but once again, I'm going to jump back to that statement. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction.
Right.
Isaiah teaches that a descent is necessary before an ascent. That is a typology in Isaiah. And in order for a millennial day to come, we have to go through a descent in order for that ascent to take place. So I'm doing this to prepare us for the time shortly on the horizon.
Oh my gosh. I just had an aha. So when we were studying and talking about the book of Job, and I realized that sometimes we pray for God to answer us, to hear his voice. Why we think something might be broken in us, because of course we're all so flawed. But God, why don't you hear my prayer? And I shared with you that if you study the prophets, when the veil was rent for them, it was when they were in that place, that bottom place. And that is where he can visit, he can see, the veil can be rent. But then I was just thinking in my mind, and this was the thing that came to me, was like, so wait a minute. And okay, so I have a lot of kids, right? People don't maybe know that. And I've been through labor, okay? And it's not fun, okay? And I've been mad at God. I'm like, wait a minute.
When did I sign up for this?
Whose plan was this? That we have to go through this to have a child. And what just hit me was, it's the pain of the labor that rends the veil for a spirit. The miracle of a birth, the miracle of a coming through the veil. That's what the labor produces. That's the equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. And that is what we have to look forward to. And the reason we have to go through this descent that is over the next few years, the reason we have to go through that 3.5 years where it seems like God, the veil is unpenetratable, where it seems like we're on our own. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? That's because after that, it's 1,000 years reign of the King. Yeah. It's a little tough. But in the long run, it's worth it. This is very personal. This is very difficult to talk about, because as we study prophecy, I don't know if any of you realize this, but sometimes it don't look very good. Okay, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. As I studied things in Ezra to prepare the last one I just gave, or the last one I just prepared for, it's not the last one we just did, and I realized what was coming on the earth. I've had a hard time not weeping. But Zion is about to be born. It's the real deal. We're reading.
And the labor will be real.
And the labor is going to be real. Anyway, so sometimes I see things through Scripture and through the Spirit that are not fun to look at. I got to confess, it's really not. For all flesh is corrupt before me, and the powers of darkness prevail upon the earth among the children of men, in the presence of all the hosts of heaven, which causes silence to reign. For all eternity is pain, and the angels are waiting the great command to reap down the earth and to gather the tares, that they may be burned, and behold, the enemy is combined. This time of silence in the heavens. It's because all flesh is corrupt. And we have to go through this labor experience. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in the heavens for the space of a half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels that stood before God. And to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. You better get really comfortable with praying.
Well, that golden altar, those prayers of the saints, actually fill the throne room during this time, according to Revelation.
Yeah, the whole symbology in the book of Revelation is temple symbology. It's the heavenly temple symbol. Things have taken place there. So back to D&C.
Back to Liberty Jail.
Liberty Jail. My
the
son.
temple prison?
Yeah, the temple prison. I love that. My son, peace be unto thy soul. Thy adversity and thine affliction shall be but a small moment. And then if thou endureth it well, God shall exalt thee on high. Thou shalt trump over thy foes. Thy friends do stand by thee, and they shall held thee again with warm hearts and friendly hands. Thou art not yet as Job. Thy friends did not contend against thee, neither charge thee with the transgression, as they did Job.
His enemies did.
Yeah, his enemies
Not
did,
his
but
friends.
not his close friends. Brigham, some of them, they're just faithful as can be. Kind of like me, I got faithful as can be here. And they who do charge thee with transgressions, their hopes shall be blasted, and their prospects shall melt away as the hoarfrost is melted from the burning rays of the rising sun. So he's saying all of this trouble on earth is about to be done away. And also, the God has set his hand to seal and change the times and seasons. And I absolutely think that's incredible, because you realize that, I hope I can explain this well, that the prophetic appointed times have been veiled from the eyes of most of the world so that they don't understand this end scenario, and to blind their minds, that they might not understand the marvelous workings, that he may prove them also and take them in their own craftiness. All these plans being laid by the adversary, all these plans being laid by the secret combinations, God's going to flip it on their head.
Well, and also, when it flips on their heads, it says God has set his hand to seal to change the times and seasons. What that means is that in our Gregorian culture, we haven't even been able to see the prophetic appointments that God has ordained from the beginning of the world.
Absolutely. That's you said it probably better than I did.
But
I was trying to say the same thing.
And in this period of time, it's unsealed.
Yes. For some.
We see.
Yep. And so take courage, because he's about to flip everything on its head. As you look around in our world, I mean, everybody can see it that's got an eye to see. Things are really messy, and they're not getting better. Good is evil and evil is good, the way they talk about it. I never dreamed. Oh, I probably shouldn't go there. I'll get this video banned.
Don't go there. I think they can imagine.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm not going to go there just for that reason. Okay. Canst thou by searching find God? Oh, we did that. Let's jump ahead to Job 12. The souls of all things are in the hands of the Lord, and with the ancient is the wisdom, and the Lord governeth in all things. So Job is beginning to.
He's a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, he's having that dialogue with God. And so far, God.
Sometimes he's kind of getting it, and then he's like,
"Oh, but it hurts."
Okay, God, you just explained this.
Yeah, I don't get it. You're beating me up too much,
Right.
And I'm sure we're going to feel feelings like this. We just don't get it. We don't understand why it has to be the way it has to be. And in some ways, I confess, I don't.
And when you think about it.
But it is. Newtonian physics.
Right.
For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction.
And
Nephi, must needs be opposition in all things. Do we understand exactly why? Maybe not. But it is a law of the eternities. Go ahead. Where was
I forgot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to make you forget. Okay. So God testifies of his confidence in the Lord and says that he slay me, yet I will trust him. He also shall be my salvation. So then we get to Job testifying of the shortness of life and certainty of death and guarantees of resurrection. He asks, if man die, shall he live again? He answers, he will wait till the Lord calls to come forth from the grave. So we're talking a little bit about the resurrection. I'm going to move through some of these chapters quite quickly because I want to get to the next main point I want to make because I can't cover them all. They set forth of wicked men. They do not believe they shall return out of the darkness and to be resurrected. That's his friends. Don't believe in the resurrection.
That wicked men.
Wicked men don't believe in the resurrection. Job rebels against the wicked ones who oppose him. Even though his friends scorn him, he testifies and witnesses it is heaven and his record is on high. So he's saying, I'll let God judge me. They continue to throw these so-called helps that aren't help at all. Kind of like I heard another person say, with friends like this, who needs enemies sometimes, that's, maybe we need to find a new set of friends. And I guess he kind of does towards the end.
I think Job is going to get the end, to the bottom
of the questions
of this reasoning.
Yes.
He said, you know what? Their conclusion is that I deserve this. Yep. And I reject that conclusion. I don't even want to talk to you guys.
I can't accept this conclusion.
Right.
Sure, we all deserve some, but God loves us. So the things that are upon us doesn't make sense of a loving God unless you understand the end game.
Unless
the long game.
We made a false assumption.
From the beginning. Yes.
That if we were righteous,
everything would be peachy.
We shouldn't have to suffer.
Exactly. Bad call. Okay? Because if that was true, we would say Christ wasn't righteous.
But
because he had to suffer big time.
I don't want anybody to get depressed here. I do think that Job's story makes the point very clearly that if we are righteous, we will be blessed in this life or in the next.
In the long game.
In the long game.
Yeah, you gotta not think in the short game. No immediate satisfaction should be your goal.
But what we don't often understand is that the greater the descent, the greater the suffering, the greater the blessing.
The lower the action, the higher the action.
Exactly.
Okay. So Job speaks of sorrow and death and the grave that day when the body returns to the dust. And he's told by his friend the state of the wicked who know not God. And they go through and they're hitting all these different points. But this is the chapter I wanted to hit next in more detail. Job tells of the ills that have befallen him and then testifies, I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he prophesies of his own resurrection, and that in the flesh he shall see God. Now let's go to those actual verses. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. Though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. I personally will see him. Yes, that's going to happen at the second coming of Christ, and that's a beautiful thing. But I haven't taken the opportunity with you of this audience to bear my testimony. And if you'll indulge me, I want to bear my testimony at this moment to you. I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't believe the gospel. You would say that's because I was raised in I had goodly parents.
That actually means good-looking parents, just so you know, in Hebrew.
I meant parents that teach me. Maybe I had good-looking parents too. I'm okay with that.
That was so random. I am so sorry.
Way to break the mood.
Please.
Oh, back to real. In my young years, in fact, I remember the exact grade I was in. I remember everything. I wanted to know. I wanted to go beyond belief. I wanted to know that God lived. And so I had this idea. I was in the 5th grade. I even remember my teacher's name and all the details. And I had this idea that I wanted to fast every day till God answered my prayers. But I knew that, or I kind of believed, that if I fasted at home, it would draw attention to myself. But it was kind of convenient, I thought, to fast school lunches because, my dad and mom were busy, and if I never asked them for lunch money, and it was back in the day before they had free lunches and everything. But anyway, if I never asked them for lunch money, they probably wouldn't even notice. And I could fast school lunches and nobody'd be the wiser. And so I began to fast school lunches because I wanted to know. Well, I fasted school lunches for quite a while. I can't even begin to tell you how long, because I don't remember. But I finally drew the attention of my teacher, or somebody who told my teacher. So he called me into his office, and he thought maybe our family couldn't afford lunches. And so he started interviewing with that in mind, that maybe we didn't have money for lunch. And so he asked, why are you not eating lunch? It's almost probing to see if they needed to intervene and give the family help for school lunches. And I broke down with tears in my eyes, and I says, no, I'm fasting. I'm fasting because I want to know that God lives. Now my teacher broke down, and tears started in his eyes, and he bore testimony to me that God lives. Good days back then. When we were a God-fearing nation, for the most part. And being that crazy kid I am, I turned back to him. I says, it's okay, I get it. I know you know. I know my parents know. It's not good enough for me. I want to know. I need to know. He didn't bother me anymore about not eating school lunches. It never came up again. And I don't remember exactly how long it was between then and when I found myself alone babysitting my younger brother and sister, and my parents had to go to some event. And I had the opportunity to be there alone, and my little brother and sister were playing in the room at the other end of the house. And I knew I had the opportunity to kneel in sacred prayer. And I knelt and I just poured my soul out to God, that he would reveal himself to me. And I don't know how long I prayed. My little brother and sister came in for a minute and seen I was crying and tried to comfort me. And I said, it's okay, go play. I had to kind of tell them everything's okay, go play, it's all fine. And then I went back to prayer. And I don't know, unless you've experienced what I'm talking about, that you can understand the experience I then received when God manifested himself unto me in a powerful way that I could never deny. And so I sit before you, this audience now, and I testify to you that I know God lives with every fiber of my being. And just like Job, I still sometimes doubt me. But I don't doubt he lives, and I'm trying to learn not to doubt that he can save me in every way.
And that he's in every suffering.
And that, yeah. And so I hope this is a gift to whoever hears this, that you actually receive my testimony and that it's a comfort to you. That I know God lives. And I know I'm his. as best as I can be, which isn't all that good sometimes. But I am his. And I felt it was important to somewhere in these presentations to share that testimony with you. In fact, Job seemed the appropriate place. And as we go into the half hour of silence in the times ahead, take comfort that he lives. I know that my Redeemer lives. I need to move ahead, but thank you for sharing this personal part of me. I hope it blesses your life. So we're going to jump to the end of Job, where the silence is broken.
You skip to the behemoth and the leviathan?
Well, you can't cover everything. So this is when now it's changed. The silence is broken, and now the face of the Lord is unveiled, like in D&C 88. When you read that the half-hour silence comes to an end, and the heavens roll back like a scroll, and the face of the Lord is unveiled. Well, this is Job's unveiling of the Lord's face. And now they're talking face to face. Now they're having that theophany.
This is when he's come all the way to the bottom, and he, instead of repenting, instead of questioning God, he has now accepted God. And I have to back up to 40 just long enough to say that part of the behemoth and part of the leviathan that God's kind of pleased with, that he created, he says, this world is so much bigger than what you understand. And he takes him on this cosmic tour of the universe.
Yeah, he starts to show him and says, he actually challenges Job and says, you think you can run this?
Right, he tells him, okay, so let's have you for one day run the planet according to your thing, that if anybody does anything good, they have to get a blessing, and if anything does anything bad, they have to get a cursing. And
right there on the spot.
Let's just, instantly apply. And, Job is just like,
okay, wait a minute.
Okay, I take it back.
Yeah. Well, and that's where we're back to the very first slide. Is God just?
And all of a sudden he sees God his wisdom is beyond.
He's looking at the grand scale, and his whole goal is not to protect us from trouble. It's to lift us to exaltation. It's a whole different goal than we comprehend. Therefore, it can seem unjust, and we can feel picked on. If you love him, if you trust him, it's like he says to Joseph, go with me into eternity. Beautiful thing. And Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou can do anything, and that no thought can be withheld from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered that I understand not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. I heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye seeth thee. Wow, there it is. The unveiling of God's face.
The rending of the veil in that place of a broken heart and a contrite spirit.
Behold, I abhor myself and repent in the dust and the ashes. So he's completely now to the point where he trusts. Even though he doesn't completely understand, he trusts. And he has wrestled, like Jacob of old maybe. He's wrestled with God directly, trying to understand. And now God has revealed himself to him in a powerful way. Beautiful, beautiful conclusion to the book of Job, and a beautiful conclusion to us. That when we go through our experiences, whether they be big or small, but when we go through the future experiences, which can be quite humbling, it's worth it. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job. Then he prayed for his friends also, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had had before. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. Now we've done the descent. We're ready to ascend. After this, Job lived 140 years, and he saw his sons and his daughters and his sons, even 4 generations. So he was 70 when all this stuff took place, I think, if I recall right, and he lived 140 years more.
So do I get to ask my question, Ken?
Absolutely.
God do math here, because I got to read this to you. It says in chapter 1, verse... Now I get that he has now
Twice
double
as much.
the camels, double the asses, double the sheep, double everything. But there's one thing that's not double. And it's right here. It says in verse, I'm looking at verse 2 in chapter 1. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. Right? Now, if I go all the way to the end, chapter 42 in Job, it's talking about him getting double as much more than his beginning. Then it gives his list in verse 12 of what he has. And then in verse 13 it says, and he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. So that's the same
As he had the first time.
that he had before. And so my question for you is, how is that double?
Well, I know the answer, so
So go ahead.
I was going to say you could answer it, but I will answer it. That means he didn't lose his first kids. Even though they perished in this life, they were not lost to him. He was still doubled in his
I think it's important.
and his children.
We're not giving up on our kids.
Exactly. We're about to the conclusion, and the conclusion of the half-hour silence is the millennial kingdom. And he is worthy. And the kingdom is here. And we're going to end this, but I'm giving you a link to a video that I would play for you if I could, but if we play it for you, it's copy infringement. So I'm going to ask you to go watch it. I'm going to ask you to go experience these videos. I'm actually giving you 2 versions of it. I found a second one that I liked just as much as the first. This is the original artist who sings the song, Is He Worthy? It's a beautiful song. And there's your link on the screen that you can type in if you'd like. But
Or you can just Google for it.
yeah.
Is he worthy?
I'm going to put it in the show notes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I put it in the show notes. Mike just says we can get it in the show notes.
And who's the
And
one that wrote the song?
Andrew
Peterson.
Peterson, there you go.
Yes.
But the one above it is one I discovered after the fact. And in a way, it's just as good, maybe a little better in one sense of the word, because it's so real that it's a congregation.
And it was produced by a Christian fellowship.
Yeah. Anyway, it's really beautiful. You can watch both of them. They're wonderful. And thank you, and till next time.
I know that my Redeemer lives,
Yep, I know that my Redeemer lives.
and I shall see him.
And
in
our
the flesh.
half hour of Gethsemane is what this is all about, that we come through and trust in the end. God
And
bless.
it's worth it.
And it's worth it.
See you next time.
See you next time. Don't forget to watch the video. It's beautiful.